I like this sermon. I've called it a sermon, but I like this lesson tonight. Uh, the I thought maybe the weather may have affected it a little bit worse than what it was going to be, but I told Pam, I said when I left home today, I said I've got to beat those storms, and I made it to Pine Street. So our house over here has a garage and a garage door opener, and I just pulled in and just sit there and went to my study over here and worked. But anyway, that's another story. I want to talk to you tonight about the discipleship and faith. And a thought struck me, and with this lesson as I was preparing it, and that is, when trials come in our lives as followers of Jesus, uh, we try to find a purpose for that, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but I think God brings into our lives situations where faith is possible, that we learn to trust Him in the situations we face in life. So that's a lesson. We don't have to do anything else tonight. That's what I want you to learn tonight. There are situations where faith is possible. Matthew 14, verse 22. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. These ships aren't like the ships we think about today. I mean, these things we have are big. But when I was in Israel, archaeologists had discovered from the Sea of Galilee a ship similar to what Peter, James, and all John, all the disciples were riding in that night. And guys, I would say it was about as far from here to our door, and about as wide as from here to about here. And it what do you call it? When it wasn't very high off the water either. Shallow drag. I mean, those ships were not made for storms. So uh, we can see here that uh, the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying of a truth, Thou art the Son of God. That's a cool story. And this story of the Apostle Peter stepping out of the boat and walking on the water is familiar. I've preached this many times in my life, basically from 2 points of view. One point of view I approached at one time was Peter's overwhelming faith by stepping out and walking on the water. And the second point I used was Peter's impetuous ways by stepping out instead of staying in the boat where Jesus put him. Okay? 2 points of view. But regardless of my point of view, I believe, considering discipleship, that it was important for the Apostle Peter, a strong, self-confident man, to step out of the ship and to risk his life to learn about his own weaknesses, and the almighty power of Jesus. If Peter had not taken the risk, he would not have learned an important lesson on faith. You see, faith is necessary after we answer the call of discipleship. What does Paul say? The just shall live by faith. Romans 1:17. The just shall live by faith. I think unless timely steps are taken, if we just trust Him and are saved, and we never step out by faith, then that call to discipleship sort of becomes insignificant to us because we don't step out, because we don't take the risk. You know, if we don't step out by faith in situations we face in our lives, we're probably kidding ourselves if we think we're true disciples of Jesus Christ. I think like the Apostle Peter 2,000 years ago, we need to face occasionally situations where faith is possible. Situation where faith is possible. First of all, I think discipleship really demands this. Situations where faith is possible. You can see, look at verses 24 and 27. I'm not going to read them again much. But look, the disciples were exactly where Jesus wanted them. It says straightway, Jesus compelled or constrained or compelled his disciples to get into a ship. This constrained them, to compel them. Strong words. And it's pointing out that Jesus said, you need to be in this ship. This is where I want you to be. And aboard the ship, the disciples were in the will of God. This is where Jesus placed them. And I want to tell you something. There is not a better place than to be in the will of God, even when we face an occasional storm. Look at verse 24. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. Now think about it. Jesus put them in the ship. And now they're in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, which is known for its quick rising storms, and they're tossed with waves, and the sea was working against them. Yet this is exactly where Jesus wanted them to be. He constrained, he compelled them to get in that ship. And now they were facing a horrible situation. Now, we can't again overlook that Jesus placed them there. As disciples, it is important to know that we must face situations where faith is possible. I've learned a few things about old Robbie Horne during the years. I faced a few situations where faith is possible. Came close one time to giving up the ministry. But you know what I figured out about me? In good old Arkansas talk, I ain't no quitter. Okay? Well, we're going to face situations. And we're going to face situations where it's possible to have great faith in God. There's going to be times when the winds and the waves work against us. There are going to be times when our ships are tossed about. We may even be exactly where God wants us to be, and the storms still come. One of the popular theologies today is that called the prosperity gospel. And that if you're a child of God, man, you got it made. Your troubles are over. I don't want to be a downer tonight, but that just isn't true. Storms are going to come. What did Jesus tell his disciples when he came to them walking on the sea? Out in the storm raging, but straightway Jesus spake to them, saying, Be of good cheer. It is I. Be not afraid. Trust me. Trust me. When the disciples feared for their lives, when they faced what seemed like an impossible situation, Jesus came to them and said, Cheer up, guys. Don't be afraid. Don't you think this is an odd response to a dangerous situation? Cheer up. Don't be afraid. No, I don't think it's odd. Jesus is saying, whatever you do and wherever you go, I'm going to be there with you. Cheer up. I'm here. I've come for you. I put you in this place. Don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. When those situations where faith is possible arise, man, they may bug us a little bit, but we have nothing to be afraid of because Jesus will be there with us. All we got to do is what? Trust Him. Next, situations where faith is possible require obedience to the call of Jesus. Peter amazes me here. What did the Apostle Peter do when he saw Jesus? Well, they thought it was a spirit. They didn't know what was coming to them walking on the sea. But Jesus said, It is I, be not afraid. And Peter said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. Okay, if it's really you, let me get out of this boat and let me walk to you on the water. Now, Jesus recognized the fact that Peter needed a lesson. And we all need a few lessons every now and then, don't we? He needed a lesson on faith when storms come. He needed a lesson on trusting Jesus, not himself, not his own strength. So Jesus basically said, okay, Peter, the sea is rough. The waves are high. The winds are working against you. But Peter, with faith in me, right now, step out of that boat and walk on the water. Uh-oh. That's a situation where faith is possible. Do you have enough trust in me, Peter, to leave that boat and walk to me on the water? You know, when I think about these things we face in our lives, when we face situations where faith is possible, they don't have to make sense as far as our human minds are concerned or from a human point of view. Some may look at the storm, the obstacle, or the challenge and say, no way, no way. I can't do that. Reminds me of Cody. I told you about taking him up on the Empire State Building on a mission trip. And he's macho man, bad man. Got him up on that observation deck, and he put his back against the wall and wouldn't move. I said, yeah, you're a brave man. He said, I got to get out of here. No way. But here's Jesus. Here I am, Peter. Things look dangerous. I know, but I'm here. Come. I'm calling you. Trust me. Have a little faith. What about Abraham all those thousands of years ago? God called him to go to a place he didn't even know where he was going. But as the Hebrew writer points out, he went. And it says, not knowing where he went. But why did he do that? Because he trusted God. And he looked for a city whose builder and has the foundations with builder, whose builder and maker is God. He stepped out by faith. Abraham's loved by God and loved by Jewish people and loved by Christian people today. He's admired. He had faith. You know, we're human. We react to storms in our own way. We often wonder why the storm has come. But look, Jesus has called us. We accepted that call. We're saved people. He wants us to be his disciples. And those storms are situations where faith is possible. Jesus knows what this world is like. Jesus knows that it's an imperfect world, and it won't be perfect until he makes it again. And he knows we're imperfect, and he knows that we're going to face situations in life that's going to shake our faith every now and then. Happened to Peter not long after that, when he denied Jesus 3 times, and he went back to fishing. But Jesus is saying, my call to you and your acceptance of that call and your faith in me and your trust in me is what sustains you. You have nothing to be afraid of, says Jesus. He says, be of good cheer. It is I. Be not afraid. Jesus has called us to be disciples. I'm sure all of you have faced situations in your life that you say, this shouldn't be happening to me. Well, that's just one of those situations we all face. And I'm not being callous when I say that. That's a time that we can learn to trust God more. You know, situations where faith is possible can go south if we lack faith. Peter stepped out of the ship and he walked on the water. I think that's pretty neat. But look at verse 30. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid. Now, what did Jesus just tell him? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Be of good cheer. Trust me. But he stepped out and he walked on the water. I don't know how far he walked on the water. It'd be a pretty unique experience, I suppose. But he saw the wind boisterous, and he was afraid. And when look, I've always heard it said, and I think this is where they get it. When fear enters, faith leaves. He looked at the water, he looked at the waves, and he was afraid, and he began to sink. And so he cried out, Lord, save me. What started off well, stepping out of the boat and walking on the water, suddenly went south. And Peter thought, what have I gotten myself into? I mean, I'm not supposed to do this. But 3 principles jump out at me here. Number 1, situations don't change quickly, more often than not. The situation didn't change when Peter stepped out of the ship. The wind was still boisterous. The waves were still raging. So what have we got going on here? What lesson we're going to learn? Faith, and I don't want to sound like a downer tonight. This is not what I mean by this lesson, but hear me out. Faith will not remove the storm. Now, we can ask God, like Paul did, to remove something going on in his life, that thorn on the flesh. And he said, I asked him to do it 3 times. And he said, my grace is sufficient. So faith will not, I'll put necessarily in there, remove the storm. So what does faith do? It gives us strength in the storm. Obeying Jesus and stepping out in a situation where faith is possible may not take the storm away, but we can always remember from this scripture tonight, Jesus saying, be of good cheer. It is I. Be not afraid. And we should be prepared when we take the initial step to face the wind and the waves head on. Second, fear can overcome our initial step of faith. I've got this. I'm going to step out. Peter thought he had it, and he stepped out, and then he became afraid, and he began to sink. Look, guys, obedience to the call of Jesus demands more than an initial faith in him. Obedience to the call of Jesus demands continual faith in him. If we don't have continual faith in situations where faith is possible, it won't be long until we're up to our necks in alligators. And the final of the 3 is Jesus is the answer. Peter did the right thing when he began to sink. He said, Lord, he looked to Jesus, Lord, save me. And it says, and immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him. Being a disciple has its ups and downs. No pun intended there. But having faith to walk is one thing. But having faith to continue walking is another thing. There will be times where we're going to face situations that just we might not even understand, may never understand. And there may be times when we face those situations that our faith wavers and we sink. But when those times come, we should look to the object of our faith. We should look to Jesus, not the situation itself. Jesus will never let us down. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith, that word, wherefore did you doubt? To us today, Hebrews 13, 5 and 6. I'll never leave thee nor forsake thee, so that we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear what man shall do to me. Come on, come in for a land. Being a disciple of Jesus is an interesting, challenging, and I think joyful life. Situations, some good, some not so good, arise. How should we view these situations? I don't think we should view them as insurmountable obstacles, but as situations where faith is possible. I can trust God to get me through this. And God, guess what? God will get us through. Peter didn't do that well on walking on water. I've tried it a couple of times and it just doesn't work for me either. But it says, Peter called to him and Jesus caught him. And it says, when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, of a truth, thou art the Son of God. Close with this thought or question. What storm can overturn the ship the Son of God sails in? Jesus brought the calm. Questions, comments tonight? Wasn't that fun? I don't think the lesson tonight was negative. I just think it gave me a lot of good feelings knowing that whatever I face, I don't have to be afraid. Jesus is there. Anything else? Questions, comments?